Police officer is in a critical, thankfully stable, though, condition in hospital after being stabbed a number of times with a machete in what the police described as a sudden and brutal attack around midnight last night in Leyton in East London. The police officer in his 30s was taken to hospital by ambulance. He was able, amazingly, to use his taser against the man, despite having already been stabbed, and the alleged attacker was then arrested by another officer. He'd actually just stopped a van at a junction in East Leyton, and the vehicle's driver, aged in his 50s, failed to stop, and he got out of the van and attacked the officer, as we say, the police saying, in a sudden and brutal attack. Well, this is just the latest spate of knife crime, and it comes on a day when young people are calling on Boris Johnson, the new Prime Minister, to take urgent action to tackle the knife crime crisis and make it a top priority for him. 6 youngsters who experienced firsthand the trauma caused by violence with weapons have demanded a meeting with the Prime Minister after putting together an action plan on how to prevent more young lives being lost. They're delivering a letter to Downing Street later this morning, signed by more than 100 young people affected by knife crime, and they're also presenting the 12-point manifesto on how they plan to make the streets safer. Well, Alison Cope is an anti-youth violence campaigner who lost her son to a stabbing 6 years ago. She joins us now. Good morning to you, Alison.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can maybe just talk, first of all, just about this horrific stabbing of a police officer overnight. Yeah. Very, very different from often the stabbings we wake up to in the morning, hearing about youngster stabbing another youngster, often told it's to do with drugs and organised crime or gang beefs and the like. This is very different, unprovoked, brutal attack on a police officer. Thankfully, he's still alive, but in critical condition. What's your reaction to that news?
I just hope he recovers. Absolutely horrific. For me, these kind of headlines, they go on every single day. And, I mean this with the utmost respect. People are put in different categories of priority, you see. So this will make huge headlines. There'll probably be a statement from Downing Street. People will say it's horrific, and it absolutely is. But when it is a young person stabbing a young person, it seems to be less of a priority when it actually comes to prevention. I mean, God knows what happened within this situation, and such a horrific thing for that policeman to have to go through and his family, and I do wish him all the best. But I know if it was a fight on the street, this wouldn't make national headlines.
Yeah, yes, indeed. I mean, that is one of the things, isn't it? What happened to your son? He was stabbed to death back in 2013. What were the circumstances there?
It was which is very common. The majority of stabbings we're seeing aren't gang-related and are not drug-related. A lot of them are, as I'm about to say, was an argument between my son and another boy. The boy found it very difficult to walk away. Many factors thrown into that, like social media, etc., etc. He went home and then came back, had a knife on him and stabbed him once in the chest, and Joshua passed away 7 hours later. So it was not gang, drugs or anything related. It was a minor argument, and we're finding that an increasing thing that's happening on our streets. This
is the thing. I think most of us would assume that if there were a situation where knives were drawn at all, let alone someone stabbed to death, that this would be some major dispute. Not that would justify it, but at least people could get their heads around it. Increasingly, we're seeing that these knife crime that we're seeing on the streets, and it's not just the capital city, it's happening across the country as well. It is over just sort of someone looks at someone the wrong way, and it's so out of control. What do you think we need to do to tackle this?
It's so complicated. There isn't a single one answer. There's many answers. I think we don't respect the fact that a lot of the younger generation have grown up in a very different environment than ourselves. Social media has a huge impact. Social media lives in a bubble of, it's not real, and they see stabbings, videos, all kinds of things. And when I speak to young people, say out of 3,000 a week, when I say where's a safe place to stab, a lot of them genuinely think there is a safe place that you can stab someone.
You're kidding me?
No.
I'm so blown away by that. Yeah. So to them, it's a little bit like a video game. They don't really see the reality. It's just something. It's something you do to show you're hard, but there aren't really any consequences to it.
Exactly, and then what they see we're giving them such mixed messages, and there was no justification to ever carry a knife. But young people are so confused. On one hand, we say to them it's not okay to join the gang. On another hand, we promote gangs like Peaky Blinders. On one hand, we show lots of negative imagery, but then we don't expect them to be influenced. And then when they do get arrested, the penalties are so inconsistent, they grow up thinking there are no consequences to my actions. And there is a very huge amount of young people without those really strong, positive role models, without the right messages. And there are no national campaigns. It's always don't carry a knife, but we don't actually explain the reality of knife crime.
Do the penalties, a lot of people talk about, you want to fine, carrying a knife on, not even using it, just having it on you, unless you're on your way back from John Lewis and you're kitting out your new kitchen. If you are carrying a knife, you get 5 years mandatory, full stop, nothing to discuss, move on from that, and regular stop and search. Would that make a difference? Because a lot of the young people I've spoken to and the youth workers who are working with them say they're not scared of the police, they're not scared of the courts, they're scared of the other people in their neighbourhood carrying knives.
Absolutely, because it's so inconsistent. I spoke to a group of magistrates and they were as frustrated as everybody else because they are not allowed. The law is already there, up to 4 years imprisonment if you are found carrying a knife for the first time. I've met young people in youth offending teams that are on their fourth sentence with probation for carrying machetes, knives, and they think, well, I'm going to get away with this, and they are. And sadly, when you put a young person in front of a judge and all the reports and all the assessments, a judge is pushed more towards let them go home to their families, let them do this. We need an alternative punishment that is there. First time you're caught with a knife, 12-month tag, in-depth therapy, in-depth everything, in-depth, all the different things that are needed.
Let's spend the money on finding out what's going on and what's motivating them. And again, my view is I'm mostly worried about the fact that youngsters are actually even feeling they need to carry a knife. That's the bit that terrifies me, because I can't imagine what it's like growing up, living in a neighbourhood, going to a school, walking around your local area, and you genuinely feel that you're unsafe without carrying a weapon. I mean, that surely is the thing we need to be tackling. Frenzied, unprovoked and shocking. Those are the words. Well, let's talk about this with a former police officer, campaigner now for victims. Right, so Norman Brennan. Good morning to you, Norman.
Yeah, good morning to you.
Good morning. I mean, it's absolutely shocking, this attack. A police officer just doing a routine stop of a van at a junction Leyton, East London, around the time of midnight last night. A man getting out of the van and instantly attacking the officer with his machete. According to this chief superintendent who's speaking earlier, they've got full body cam footage of the attack. The first blow was aimed at the police officer's head. He is in critical condition, thankfully in stable condition. But what's your reaction to this story?
Well, over the past year, Julia, over 22,000 police officers have been assaulted in Britain. This is not just a push and a shove, because most people are never ever charged with that. These are people that kick, punch, spit, headbutt, and more worryingly, carry knives and stab my colleagues. Although they've got stab-resistant vests, CS spray, and their batons, it doesn't protect their entire body. And not only that, we don't get out straight away with our batons and like the Americans do with their guns. Yeah. We normally try and speak to the driver, because the last thing they want to do is to provoke a situation. But most often now, just by being a police officer, you're provoking an assault. And yet again, we've got a police officer critical in hospital. And as you rightly say, fortunately, his situation has stabilised, stabbed multiple times. I mean, for God's sake, Julia, this is a police officer. A police officer is the public are the police. So if you can't protect those that actually protect society, who can you? And the point I'm making is the sentences for those that assault police officers is almost as disgraceful as assault itself.
Well, indeed. I mean, this is the thing. It's such a frenzied attack. We're told that they don't believe it to be terrorism related. But I think most of us are just shocked by the fact that the idea that is that, again, we're not talking about teenagers who perhaps don't understand the value of life, involved in drug gangs, and like we're talking about apparently the man who's been arrested in his 50s, but driving around London with a machete in his car, in his van.
Well, this is it. I mean, knife crime is out of control. I mean, we've had this chat so many times. This is a national crisis. And the thing is, what happens is politicians, the London mayor, start putting it on for this is a health epidemic. They play around at the edges. They don't deal with the substance. And a lot of police officers are just not about anymore. We've got 27% less traffic officers. Now, these are the types of offences that many traffic officers come up against. And when you think that somebody's actually carrying a knife, and in this particular case, a machete in their vehicle, it is clear that if they got involved in, for example, a road rage, somebody cut them up, they are seconds away from a murder. I mean, what has this country come to?
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of people are this morning.
Once again, we are awoken to the news this morning that there's been a terrible knife attack somewhere in East London. It could be somewhere in East Manchester. It could be somewhere in Western Birmingham. It could be in Newcastle. It could be in Glasgow. It could be in Leeds, Sheffield, Bristol. It could even be in Taunton, because knife crime is endemic in this country now. But the biggest thing that has changed for me is that last night a police officer was stabbed with a machete in what is being described as a frenzied attack. Now, thankfully, it would appear that the officer concerned is actually going to recover. He was in critical condition at one point. He's undergoing surgery this morning, but it looks as though he will live and he will be okay. But when it comes to the point where criminals don't care whether they shoot the police, whether they stab the police, whether they run cars at the police, then surely we have lost the streets altogether. Let's talk to Chris Hobbs, a good friend of the show, former Met police officer himself, of course. Chris, a very good morning to you.
Yeah, morning, Mike.
I mean, this is a different level now, isn't it? Because once they start attacking the police, then sort of all bets are off, aren't they?
These attacks on police have been increasing in severity and number for months and months now. In actual fact, yesterday, before this terrible incident in Leyton, the Metropolitan Police Task Force tweeted that they confronted a male who was threatening officers with a knife and tasered him and arrested him. So this isn't uncommon. Islington, a few months ago, officers were attacked with a knife when they went to what seemed a routine domestic dispute.
Right.
I think what you're seeing now, really, it's open season on police, and that's a major problem. But as you quite rightly say, there's something rotten spreading throughout society. It's not police who are just police on the receiving end.
No,
it's NHS workers, it's teachers, it's shop workers. There is something really going badly wrong. I can't quite put my finger on it. But, of course, if you're getting attacks on police, and I was out Saturday, Mike, with observing the Tommy Robinson demonstration. And the bile and the hatred directed towards police from those protesters was just really dreadful from so-called patriots. And this is something that's right across society, even though the police retain basically the trust of the public, 76%, I think it was at the last poll. But something's going badly wrong, and if we're not careful, we're going to get a police officer killed soon.
Well, that is the problem. And I know that you and I have spoken before about the level of violence against police officers, and I think the last time we talked about it, I said surely there should be an automatic custodial sentence for anyone who assaults a police officer. But this is taking it one step further in a way. And the other thing that concerns me is the type of weapon used, that it wasn't just, a flick knife or a Swiss Army knife. It was a machete, something which is probably, 2 feet long with a massive big handle on it, something that you couldn't possibly want to do anything with other than injure someone. No,
that's right. Machetes seem to be becoming ever popular to be carried as well as knives, as you quite rightly say, and it's a lethal weapon. I mean, even a small knife, as you know, Mike, can be a lethal weapon.
Of course.
If it's used in the right place. There was this programme the other day which showed a stabbing 24 hours in police custody. And it was very graphic. It actually showed a stabbing in a Leyton shopping centre.
Right.
And then you actually saw one guy who'd been stabbed, dripping blood going up to a security officer, and then another one. And this guy then just collapsed with blood spurting. And you then had frantic attempts to revive him, and he died.
Yeah.
In front of us.
Right.
It was
just horrific, isn't it? It's horrific. And the thing that worries me the most, Chris, is that we seem to be kind of sleepwalking through it. There are those who blame Sadiq Khan and won't see past that. There are those who say, well, it's the Tories' fault because they took all the police off the streets. I mean, it's clearly much more than either of those things.
I think you're right. As I just said, it's something that's affecting all sorts of agencies, and it's really across the board. What you need to cope with it, though, is a police force that's fully functioning. If something's going wrong in society, you really need those police officers out there. You need police stations open, and that isn't happening. And what you've also got, Mike, and as I say, I saw it on Saturday, but I'm looking now at an editorial from the Mail from 2 days ago, and it shows a Metropolitan Police helmet with maggots crawling out of it. And it's in relation to the VIP, this is about VIPs being arrested unfairly by the Met.
Right.
Now, they've got a point. Something obviously went badly wrong there.
Yes.
But what it seems to me happens is if something goes wrong in the NHS or at a particular hospital, and it's a scandal, but it's restricted to those people responsible for it. If something goes wrong in the police, it's like the police as a whole get smeared with that particular problem.
Yeah.
And again, on Saturday...
Do you think, though, that the management of the police have been partially responsible for that? And I'm not in any way excusing people abusing the police or being violent towards them or anything like that, but certainly people writing stories about the police force's inability to do something very well and then try and cover it up. You know, I mean, I'm not sure that you're going to stop that if that's what's going on.
No, and I would agree. If something goes wrong in the police, it has to be highlighted.
Yeah.
But then there has to be balance, because every day you get actions by police, and you obviously see it on police social media, where police act with extraordinary bravery or compassion in saving lives. Now, those stories will never make the newspapers. I send them to the newspapers.
Right.
I send them to the media. I just get ignored.
You should send them here to Talk Radio, because we'll do them, Chris. I mean, you know, we are champions of the police when they do stuff right. And I mean, only the other week we saw those incredible brave police officers in the London Bridge attacks walking through Borough Market, unarmed effectively, looking for the guys who had knives and swords effectively strapped to their wrists so that they couldn't be removed, who were intent on murdering as many people as possible. And our guys were literally walking around looking for them.
Yeah, and you're quite right. And yes, you know, your radio sort of channel, as it were, is one of the few that actually has a bit of balance.
Yeah.
But if you look at some newspapers, the Sunday Times actually put some sort of advert out asking that if you hadn't been well treated by police after reporting a crime, contact them. Now, yes, we know there's issues about reporting crime. We know there's issues about investigating crime. But again, it's like the media, sections of the media are looking for bad news in respect to... So I said the editors are saying, go out and find me an anti-police story. And that, of course, just... If you're a criminal, it just makes it that much easier for you to overstep the mark and almost justify an attack on a police officer, as I saw, you know, with my own eyes on Saturday.
Well, as you say, it does create a sort of an atmosphere in which that's much more likely to happen. I've got a tweet here, funnily enough, from somebody calling himself Pompey Pleb, who says a police officer was stabbed in the back at midday in a park in Portsmouth by a county lines dealer, and it didn't even make the national news. I don't remember seeing that at all.
No, I must admit, I must have missed that, as you do miss things on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm sure it featured somewhere, but very often on Twitter you do see some pretty horrendous incidents and acts of really commendable bravery by police in dealing with some of these people.
Right.
But
what about the presence of things like machetes? What can we do about that? Because, of course, everybody knows that things are available on the internet. You can get things sent to you through the post. But it seems to me that we have to do something about the types of weapons that are being used out there on the streets, don't we?
Well, it is very difficult to control what comes in, as it were, into the country and what goes out in terms of on the internet, or even what you can buy in shops. And yes, machetes are pretty dreadful implements, but you can buy... They've tried to tighten up in shops now, haven't they, in terms of purchasing knives, but it's still not difficult.
No, I'm sure there are certain shops that you can't buy them in. I mean, I tell this story frequently, that when I was once out and about... A couple of years ago, it was one of my kids, and I had to go and get an axe because we wanted to chop some wood, and I also had to get a pair of scissors or something. I went to Tesco's. I had to show ID to buy the scissors, but I went to B&Q to buy the axe. No problem.
Yeah.
You know, so you kind of going, well, that's all very well, but, you know, the axe is a little bit more dangerous than a pair of scissors. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, there is an issue there, without a doubt. And there is now, isn't there, this talk of violence reduction and Glasgow and education. And I think all that has got a part to play. But whatever happens, the public health approach, Mike, isn't it, that they're talking about now? But that if it's effective at all, and you've got so many fingers in the pie, so many people on the boat rowing in different directions, you've got people who are saying, no, let's not have on Twitter pictures of knives that police have seized through stopping it, because that makes things worse.
Yes.
Now, personally, I just think that's utter rubbish.
Yeah.
Because most of the violence that's generated amongst the youth, you see on social media. It's there in abundance. These drill rappers boasting about their exploits, can get millions of views. That's where the problem is, not police pictures of knives being seized. But you've got people involved in this violent reduction industry, as it's become. But you've got so many different views and people pulling in all sorts of directions that you wonder, is it ever going to be effective? And are we doomed to have this problem with us for many years?
No, of course. And when you see the other story that we've got this morning about how knife possession offences involving women have increased steeply, up to 1,500 possession offences last year alone, and that seems to be gang-related. Again, these are presumably people who are holding onto knives which are massively big and massively dangerous, not smallish. And I know that you can still kill someone with a flick knife, that's not my point, but they're so brazen. You can't just walk around with a machete and nobody can see it, can you?
No, that's right. And of course, as has been pointed out, girls are far less likely to be stopped and searched than boys are. There's not the number of female...
Well, maybe that's going to have to change.
Well, maybe, yeah, but you need the female officers to do it.
Yeah.
And, you need to call them in. You obviously can't have a male searching a female. But even violence, gang violence amongst girls, you've seen some of the things on YouTube. Yeah. Really serious incidents of violence involving girls attacking girls. So there's a real problem there. It's across the sexes, unfortunately, and it just adds to this pretty disastrous picture that we've got at the moment in this country.
I know, absolutely shocking. Chris, as ever, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Chris Hobbs there, a former Metropolitan Police officer. Detective Chief Superintendent Richard Tucker has said this about what happened last night in East London, in Leyton High Road to be precise. Having engaged a driver who was quite aggressive because there was some kind of a chase involving a white van and a police car, he then tries to make off, gets back in the van, and a violent struggle ensues where he produces a weapon and stabs our officer in the head and around the body. While being stabbed, the policeman, who has around a decade of police experience, is said to be in his 30s, managed to taser his attacker before the suspect was arrested by another officer. The officer, of course, is under the hospital treatment at the moment. He's being operated on. I think he's got damage to his hand. He needed stitches in the side of his face where he was slashed. But carrying a machete, surely to God, should be some kind of offence which involves you having to go to prison for a very long time. Attacking a police officer should be an automatic custodial sentence, shouldn't it? I can't imagine why it would be anything else. Mike says this: half the policing is by respect for the uniform. How can you have respect when you have officers dancing, skateboarding and generally making fools of themselves? In my day, the sight of a uniform was enough to put the fear of God into you. I think, again, it's not about that. It's about lots of different things. Let's go to the phones, because I want to hear from you all on this, please. 0344 499 1000. David, first of all, is in Bermondsey. Hi, David.
Hi, Mike.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah. What do you want to tell me?
Mike, I just want to say, from my own perspective, there's an awful lot of videos on YouTube of people that just seem to hate the police.
Right. What, just mouthing off about them?
No, they film the police at the same time. They're abusive towards them. They don't comply when the police are asking questions. They say things like, am I obliged to do that? And I think a lot of people, am I obliged to answer that question? And I think a lot of people are watching these videos and becoming brainwashed and thinking the police are the enemy.
Yes, I think there is definitely an element of that. They certainly don't seem to fear the police, do they?
No, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, OK, thanks for that, David. A lot of stuff going out there. Once again, social media seems to be playing quite a big role here, because we hear as well all the time about how some of these gangs are making videos which are kind of threatening other people, threatening other gangs, making it very clear that this is what we're going to do. Some of them are wearing masks, some of them are not. Let's talk to Mike, who's up in York. Hello, Mike.
Oh, good morning, Mike.
Good morning, sir. What would you like to tell us? Yeah, thank you very much. What would you like to tell us?
Well, I think we've had the discussion before about capital punishment.
Yeah.
Let's have a referendum. But let's also think about the other side of it. The police do not have a good record. I don't like the police. I don't hate them. That's a very powerful word.
Yes.
But I would, because of my past experiences, we used to witness things going on in the street, and a secretary come to me who was in the offices above looking down on what was going on. And she said, "You'll never beat the police. Never, ever. The police police the police. The Federation of Police Officers, different ranks of course, are there for the police. It's a union. It is not a look after the public bit, it's a look after the police.
But the problem, I suppose, is, Mike, that, it's not necessarily... You don't have to love the police, you don't have to even like the police, but you still turn to the police when somebody is committing a crime in your neighbourhood, and you still expect the police to be able to protect you, don't you?
Well, yeah, but you've got to trust. The word is trust. Let's look at, kind of past experience that everybody can look up, which is Orgreave 55.
Yeah.
A public inquiry found that they perjured Amber Rudd's Home Secretary. It's not in the public interest. Well, we are where we are now because they've got off with it. And if Orgreave 55 had never happened, then Hillsborough would never happen. What you had is loads of police officers going round lying, really, to keep their own track.
So you think that's undermined the trust that we then have in the police on the street?
Well, it's not only that. I mean, it's not. It's bad. I mean, when I go to Leeds or I go to Manchester, it is bad.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I would say also is you met Chief Constable. Now, when she made that mistake shooting Mendes, the first thing the police did, including her, was go to character assassination.
Yeah.
It was his fault, not the police's. If the police had put their hand up straight away and said, look, we've shot the wrong bloke, that'd have been all right.
Right, particularly given what was going on, because it was a very febrile atmosphere on that particular day.
Everybody, I make mistakes, you make mistakes, we all make mistakes. Put your hand up and agree, but the police don't. They will draw Hillsborough out for 30 years.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. I mean, we're seeing the same thing now with the Carl Beach story, where, they basically covered it up and they've done an investigation which has led nowhere, where nobody has been in any way punished for what went on. And for the Chief Justice, the former Chief Justice in the case who did the inquiry and who made a report out, to go to the newspapers and say something needs to be done here because the police are not doing anything.
But can I mention one case that is the absolute travesty of... It is known as Stephen Kisco, who was alleged to have murdered Leslie Molseed.
I don't remember the case. It sounds vaguely familiar, but remind me.
Well, the journalist who pursued this was brilliant. He was called something like Andy Partner. His name escapes me now. But Stephen Kisco was found guilty because he had a funny name, he had learning difficulties, and he was foreign. 16 years later, he was pardoned because he could not have committed the crime.
Right.
He was assaulted numerous times in prison. And if you look it up, Mike, if you do look it, because it's a good one to look up, it's good to refer to, the 3 police investigators that actually put him behind bars knew he was innocent.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the allegation now being made in the Carl Beach case, that the police officers who went to get warrants to search the premises of various named individuals supposedly were giving false information knowingly.
Well, I'd urge anybody listening to this programme now, and it's a brilliant programme, you have so many good topics, it's unbelievable.
Thank you.
But Stephen Kisco is a difficult name to put in your laptop, but you go to Leslie Molseed.
I'm just looking at it now. It looks like there was a movie made about it as well.
I don't know about that. But the thing is, what the police didn't grasp is while Stephen Kisco, an innocent man, was in prison for 16 years, the guy that did it was walking around doing who knows what.
Well, that's the other problem. I mean, it's a bit of a leap, and I know what you're saying, Mike, and I don't disagree with anything you're saying. Whether or not that has led overall to the failure of the police and the public's kind of relationship, I don't know. But we will get into that, because I want to know whether you don't trust the police and whether that, in turn, has led to this outbreak of violence against the police by the criminals who don't care about what happens to them because there's not enough punishment for that, and there's also no respect on trust for the police. That is a massive problem. But to carry, surely, a machete must have some kind of proper punishment attached to it. Surely it has to have a prison sentence attached to it. And to assault a police officer in any way, shape or form, particularly with a knife, any kind of weapon, really, should be an immediate custodial sentence. I'm not even sure that the charge that has been levelled against the person who is responsible, supposedly, for this particular crime is even that serious. That's the problem. Let's have a quick call from Alan, who's in Hartley-Brewer, wants to talk about the police. Hi, Alan.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning. What would you like to say?
One of the problems is we don't have a police force anymore, thanks to Daisy May abolishing them and ordering it to a police service.
Yes.
The other thing is, this is a justification for the police officers to be armed. If he'd had a sidearm, he could have protected himself.
Yes, and could have shot the man dead. Yes, I mean, would you be concerned if we had an armed police force in this country?
I'd be relieved if we had an armed police force. I think it would be a good idea. And that guy coming at him with a machete, if he pulled his gun and said stop, he would probably have stopped.
Yes. Yeah,
and
because, I mean, it's not...
And he wouldn't have to go to hospital and put his life in danger. If he refused to stop and continued to threaten to attack him, he could have shot him, and that would have been the end of him. That would have been a good day's work.
I think you're absolutely right. And also, it would be a warning, so every other scumbag who wants to go out who thinks that they can harm the police without any fear or favour. Because
discipline and respect in the country is being lost since, I believe, they did away with corporal punishment in schools. Going back a couple of decades, those kids that had no discipline and respect in those years are now producing kids that don't get any discipline and respect either. There's no respect for the elderly, no respect for authority, no respect for teachers. Discipline's breaking down in lots of schools. Suspend the kids, they get no education, and this is the result. Yes, I think, Alan, you're absolutely spot on. Thank you very much indeed for that call. Alan, I think, makes a very good point. Let's put it out there for conversation and discussion. Should we just get an armed police organised situation going on so that every single police officer is actually armed? Every single police officer carries a sidearm, as they do in many countries of the world. If you go to France, if you go to Germany, if you go to Italy, if you go to the United States of America, loads and loads of individual, ordinary police officers walking the street have a holster in which they keep a handgun, which is usually sort of, locked shut at any given point. They don't pull it out whenever they feel like it. However, they can shoot people if they want to. I think that's the way we're going to have to go, isn't it? Hello, Paddy.
Yeah, good morning, Mike.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm very well.
Good. What do you want to tell us?
Well, every policeman in Northern Ireland has a sidearm. Every single one of them.
Right.
Now, I'm not someone who actually trusts the police a great deal, but I trusted them enough to be armed.
Yes. Have they always been armed over there? Is it just since the PSNI was instituted?
No. From day one,
when they were the RUC?
Yes, absolutely. They all had a sidearm. Now, everyone listening to the show, I assume, would be pleased if the police gunned down a jihadist in the street in Borough Market.
Yeah.
No one would complain against that. So why can't the police gun down these people marauding through the streets of London with huge knives?
Yeah. Well, certainly, I think last night in Leyton High Road, if the guy who you were trying to get out of a van came at you with a machete with the intent of using it on you, I think as a police officer you would be entirely within your rights to shoot him.
Well, if it was a Northern Irish policeman, he would just pull his sidearm out and riddle him full of bullets.
Yeah. Well, you don't even have to do that. I mean, you just shoot them once and put them down. You don't actually have to kill them, do you?
Yeah, and if these idiots were being shot, regularly, they would start sharing these videos of this happening.
Yes.
And it just might put them off.
I think you're absolutely right, because there's no deterrent better than death, in my view. I know that some people say, oh, well, the death penalty doesn't work, and that may well be true because it's after the fact. But if you think there's a pretty good chance you're going to be gunned down on the street by committing a crime against the police, I think you won't be committing the crime.
Of course, and it's only a short-term solution here. Obviously, I think everyone listening to the show realises it's some problem with our society. Just like in America, there's some problem with American society.
Yes.
We need to sort that out.
Right.
Because, for example, people are complaining at the moment about all the guns in the US.
Yeah.
Well, Switzerland has got more guns per head of population.
Yes, and Canada also does.
Yes, and the average young military age Swiss man, or Swiss, has to keep an assault rifle in their house.
Well, I've seen pictures of people walking down the street in Switzerland. Paddy, I've got to go, thanks. Seeing people walking down the street in Switzerland with rifles over their shoulder. And they're quite happily able to get on a bus. They're quite happily able to walk into a store, walk into any kind of shop. I mean, I've been in Texas where they have signs as you walk into bars that say, please check your weapon with the cloakroom. And people put their guns in the cloakroom so they don't get carried away while they're in the bar and decide to start shooting people. It's perfectly possible to do that. But I think the time has now come, has it not, for the police to be armed in this country, because we can't have people walking around waving machetes, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, my brother's a serving detective sergeant in the Met at the moment,
right.
And there are a couple of things that people need to think about and perhaps calm down. It's a very fresh incident, what happened last night.
Yeah.
The officer that drew his taser, the difference between drawing a taser and a firearm are going to be exactly the same. So whether this officer was armed or not, the response to him actually drawing that weapon to use would have been very similar, and would that have not have stopped the injuries that have happened to him? That's a big question to ask. And then,
well, you can shoot somebody from further away than you can tase them from there, can't you?
Yeah, you can do, but would you necessarily just shoot somebody for the heck of it? What he's probably done, and when we don't know yet, is he's probably gone up to the vehicle, opened the door, getting the suspect out, and that's when the attacks happened, and you wouldn't necessarily draw your firearm from that. We police by consent in the United Kingdom. We're not a military style like the United States.
No, we're not, but as a result of the knife crime epidemic, which we are currently in the midst of, I think we have to change the way we do policing in this country, because I don't think the way it's being done is working.
Well, you could argue that. So shall we use the CJISD stat, which is the Criminal Justice Information Services Division in the United States, which shows since 2008 to 2017, which is 10 years, 527 officers have been killed from their own firearm or accidentally in the line of duty. That's one a week, roughly.
Yeah, well, America's a very big country. It has a huge history of gun crime, and also almost everyone in America has a gun. So I don't think there's much point in comparing those sorts of statistics to ours, because we don't have a gun crime culture, but we currently have a knife crime culture. So I just think that the police themselves, and we all are also hearing, and you'll know this from your brother's accounts, I'm sure, because we did a programme on this just about a week or two ago, more and more police officers are being assaulted on a regular basis. And the problem for me is not so much about how the police protect themselves, but it's why people now think that they can attack police officers because they don't fear the consequences.
That is correct. I do agree with you on that. But going back to assaulting, and we are different to America, I agree with you. But the one thing that my brother has always told me, because I've said to him, why don't you want a firearm? And I've had this discussion lots, and he has said, anything we can carry can be used against us. So they've got their ASP, they've got their taser, CS spray, etc. They all get hit with the ASP in training, they get tasered, they get CS spray. They know what it's like. You're not going to shoot an officer to say, this is what it feels like. So anything they can carry, a police officer can be overpowered, and that weapon can be used against them.
No, I get that.
I do think you're right. I think you are spot on with what do we do. And there is no fear up there. When I was younger, I'm 36 years old. When I was younger, I was brought up to respect police officers, and I still do. And I feel old because many of them are younger than me now.
Well, that's how you know you're getting old, is the police start to look a bit younger.
It certainly is. But I respect them, and there is not that respect. I was brought to respect my elders. There is no respect nowadays in the younger generation, and that is what we need to look at. People go to prison for rehabilitation reasons. That's the way our prison service works. And yet,
and that doesn't work either.
No, it doesn't. And they break the law, but then they're handed out freebies. Oh, here's some qualifications which a normal law-abiding citizen doesn't get.
Yeah.
Punish them.
No, I agree. But the other good thing for me about a police officer carrying a weapon is not so much about the overpowering, which is, yes, possible, but not something that would happen every single time. But it might be more of a deterrent. Now, you could make an argument, I'm sure, for both sides of that it might not be a deterrent. But I suspect there are many marginal criminals who, if they thought there was a chance they would be shot if they did something anti-police rather than, basically nothing happens to them, I think they wouldn't do it.
I would hope so. But then you also got that other avenue of thinking of, if they're going to be going down for something, and they know if I hit that officer, I'm going to go down for X amount of years. If I seriously assault them, do I just go one step further and see if I can get away with it and take their life?
Yeah,
the last one I believe that happened in London, bless him, was PC Keith Palmer, who lost his life in the line of duty, and that was a terrorist incident.
Yeah,
and there was a gun there that was shot. No, you can't. No, that was a one-off thing. But it is a scary world that people are carrying knives. And even down here in Devon, which, let's face it, is heaven's waiting room down here. Most of the population are over 70. There is a lot
ageist now. That's not nice.
You'll be one soon. Though. Oh, tell me about it. But there are a lot of gang cultures down here. There's a lot of knife crime going on, and people do carry knives. And, you're talking little old Devon where nothing happens.
I know.
It's scary.
It's crazy. Bill, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning. I was just phoning up, Mike, with regards to the guy saying about capital punishment back in our... not capital punishment in our schools, sorry.
Well, that's a bit harsh. Let's just stick with corporal punishment first and then see how that goes, shall we?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was the point I was going to make. Corporal punishment in schools, it doesn't really work. And at the end of the day, are we saying that the only way we're going to and the guy sort of intimated that it was to gain respect by using violence, and I just think that's a totally wrong attitude to be taken.
Yes, I think you're probably right. I think there was a time when people believed that, and there maybe was even a time when it worked.
Well, I would just say from my own personal experience, having been caned several times and received the slipper from the gym master and the deputy head and all that type of business, I mean, it never ever made one iota of difference to my behaviour and how I conducted myself, really, because it happened several times. But the minute they gave me 1 hour's detention and we rocked up at 20 to 4, we returned and made to face the clock and sat there for 55 minutes and in total silence. If you made any sounds or caused any issues, you got another one. I only done that twice.
Right. Well, yeah, but you say that it didn't have any effect on you, Bill, but maybe you're a fine, upstanding member of the community now because of it. You never know.
Well, I just bring this point. I mean, would you hit your children because you couldn't get through to them?
Only under extreme provocation. No, of course I wouldn't, no.
Well, there you go. So why would we even enter the debate of allowing other people to hit our children?
Yes, no, I take that point very well. I was like you. I was also given a slipper several times, and we had a kind of league table in my school. So the more you got, the higher up the league table you went. But it didn't really bother us too much, to be honest.
It was a badge of honour to a certain extent.
It was.